So I started it again, but this time the messenger app didn't come up and ask me to type in my telephone number, and usually when that comes up it cuts off the video, so I'm gonna have to keep turning around to check that the video is still running. Why is this so bad? Why has this happened to me? Did you made some, there's some remnant command line, there's some command line argument because I once tried to enable enhanced text messaging with large files or some fucking cock-sucking shit that you manufactured. And that didn't work, so I still get the thing popping up after a week. Is that what it is? I finished my beer, I'm on water now. So anyway, we were trying to get back to the frog story. So Simon wrote this thing. Simon and I tried to get together to do this trip. We did a practice canoe run. Actually, I think maybe that was the second trip that we made to wherever it is that Simon lived. With Helen. Maybe the first time I didn't go. The second time we went and watched this thing about the tiger. It's this BBC World Wildlife movie. Some guy doing the mast. About the tiger. That was great. About the forests in northern Siberia. And but after that I did a bit more research and I thought a bit more about traveling with Simon and his friend Julian, and I just didn't want to do a trip with somebody I didn't know. And I told him that, and in the end we went out to Bolivia together in July or June 2008. Simon and I had already booked our flights and we went out together. Julian was on another flight with another half of the canoe or something, and American Airlines, I think it was American, they lost half the canoe. I think he packed the frames and the skin in two different packages or something, gave one to Julian and only one arrived, something like that. Anyway, we'd already decided to part ways, to travel to Bolivia together and spend some time in La Paz together, orienting ourselves. And so I got to meet Julian. He was okay. We went out to a meal at that restaurant Colonial in La Paz. I had a nice meal with some girls because there was a queue for tables, and so I went and said to these girls, do you want to join up with us as foursome, and we'll get one table together. And so we had dinner with these nice girls, 5 of us in a foursome. And then Simon and Julia went on their disastrous trip, and I'd actually got money from the British Canoe Union, from Bronwyn Manby's brother, Dave Manby, who was a hero of mine. Dave Manby used to be a friend of Mick Jones. Mick Jones was killed in an attempt to canoe the Sunkosi River in the Karakoram somewhere. And I met Bronwyn on a plane to Delhi in 1989. That's how I knew her, and I wrote to Dave Manby in 2007, and that's when I made contact with Bronwyn again. She worked for George Soros, the Soros Foundation, before it changed its name to Open Societies Foundation. So some good came of it, Bronwyn, didn't it? Fuck. Thing still hasn't come up. And I went down this other route I'd found from Apollo, from Pelechuco to Apollo, following the route of Percy Harrison Fawcett, and I think also a Norwegian explorer called Baron von Nordenskjold or something. Because I had access, because I was at Cambridge, I had access to JSTOR, and I could look up the Royal Geographical Society's letters archive, and I could read about these early 19th, 20th century trips to Bolivia of Nordenskjold and Fawcett and another guy, I can't remember. Later it became pretty amazing to me that I had access to those. I was at Cambridge, but people in Bolivia didn't have access to that information about Bolivia, about the original exploration of the rivers. Exploration of Bolivia was really primitive state even by the early 20th century. It was, it was wild stuff, cannibal tribes eating people and stuff. I can't remember the name of the river. They were still exploring it by river. So anyway, back to 2012, and I'm starving at Christmas, eating mangoes that fall off the tree, and Don Rene and Doña Carmen rescue me and take me to their gold mining camp 20 kilometers away from Guanay. I still haven't looked up the name of the place. And I'm there, I'm the Sereno and working at night. And it's the rainy season, so it starts flooding, and the room that I have is next to the room where they keep all of the engines and stuff. They use pumps and all sorts of crap they use for mining. I never even dared go and look at what they were doing with the mining. They were mining with water, basically washing stone into the river and polluting the river, and using huge amounts of diesel. And there were these diesel pump engines in the room next to me. And it was raining, and the rain was leaking into the room, running off the diesel pumps and out. So you had this kind of oil slick on top of all the puddles outside, and it was a nice place, but it was all polluted by diesel oil and engine oil additives. And it had all washed off this equipment next to me. And one night I was in there, and a little tree frog, like the one I'd seen when I was a kid in Port Elizabeth, a beautiful little jeweled reed frog with suckers on his feet that used to sit on reeds, and big long back legs for swimming. I saw him come through the grass, and there was a big puddle which was full of runoff from the room next to me, so it was full of oil slick. I could see it in the light from my room. And this frog then jumped into the oil slick, swam across it, and then crawled up onto the concrete of my room, and he only got about 3 inches away from the sill of the door, and he died. And in no time at all, he just kind of dissolved and disintegrated into nothing. He was just, he'd been from a jeweled reed frog he just became nothing. And I made up a story about him in my head. I thought what he said was, at the time I was writing all this standard ML code that I later put in that Genesis PDF, all this standard ML code to do syntax and semantics and rewrite rules and stuff. And I imagined this little frog, before he jumped into the pond, saying, "You've done very well, you're doing the right thing, but people are going to say that you're crazy and that what you're talking about just doesn't matter. So I'm going to show you something so that you'll remember why it matters." And he jumped into this toxic water full of chemicals from the engines and the fuel, and he showed what it did to him, and it just destroyed him. And I often thought of that afterwards when I saw Evo's fucking announcements about how ecologically sound the oil production in Bolivia was, that every time there was a spill that they cleaned it up and they did a good job. And I thought, how are you going to know? That frog entered the hydrocarbon water mixture and dissolved. There was nothing recognizable left after a few hours. Are you seriously telling me that you know the effects of an oil spill in the Bolivian Amazon from your fucking petrochemicals which you're using to buy the electorate in this country? And I tell you what, Evo Morales, you are one piece of garbage. You are one fat piece of fucking crap. So look up the history of Burma Oil and Stan Wilson and the filth that what's his name? The guy who wrote Down and Out in Paris and London. What he wrote about being in Burma and living near the oil refinery and the toxic smoke. And all that to me is Britain. That's Britain. That's what you are. You organised a campaign just to keep on exploiting your North Sea oil reserves, and they're gone now. And you've got the Norwegian Sovereign Wealth Fund propping up Apple in order to keep the Fed in business. And you seriously think, people think that any of this art that we're doing with videos, and this art is supposed to be useful? Really, I don't believe that. This art isn't anything. We might know eventually that it's when we can make it real. But if we can't make it real, me and Laura Parsini, me and Shakira, Lana Del Rey, Taylor Swift and her Swift on security, all that is just, it doesn't mean anything. Not to me. So we can collect information and we can fit it into a puzzle, but it's just abstract. And the frog can show you that that's the case just by jumping in the pond and dissolving. All the beauty, all of the no amount of art is ever going to get that back. The art is bullshit until you make it real. Absolutely meaningless. Even Yona balancing stones. It doesn't mean anything. So the latest is I went to see if I could get a COVID vaccination so that I could cross the frontier, but the way they're doing the COVID vaccinations, they don't know when there'll be another vaccination. Apparently it's free, but there's no, I just have to go every day and see if the bench is there, and maybe they'll give me a vaccination, and maybe it won't be the one that I need to repeat after 60 days to get a full vaccination. Maybe it'll be the other one. I can't remember, the Pfizer or something. If I get the Pfizer, it's just one vaccination and you're fully vaccinated and you can cross. If it's the other one, I have to be here 60 more days. And I don't have enough rent to pay for my rent tomorrow. I paid for it today out of what I'd saved, but I haven't got enough now to pay for tomorrow, so I have to go and beg again. So that's the end of my story about the frogs. I hope you enjoyed it.